Welcome to A Dad's Path, where we navigate the heart and science of parenting. Each episode, we tackle issues that dads everywhere face and deliver actions you can take right away. Join us as we uncover the balancing act of raising resilient, loving kids. Visit us at adadspath.com to learn more. Ready for the journey? Let's begin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Dad's Path podcast. I'm Will Bronstein. Today we're here with Dr. Shaan Patel. He's an MBA, he's a doctor, he's the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. You may have seen him on ABC Shark Tank. Prep Expert is an education company. Has helped more than 100,000 students improve their SAT and ACT scores, get into top colleges, and win over $100 million in scholarships. His goal, I believe, is to get to $1 billion in scholarships, which is pretty insane, but we'll talk about that. And Dr. Patel knows what he's talking about. He raised his own SAT score from average to perfect, literally perfect. He has 20 years experience in SAT prep and has authored 10 plus prep books, so he knows what he's talking about. He's also a board certified dermatologist. He was named one of Inc. magazine's 30 under 30, holds degrees from Yale and University of Southern California. His most recent book is Prep Expert Digital SAT Playbook, Winning Strategies to Achieve Your Dream Score. You can learn more about Shaan and his company and all his products at prepexpert.com, which I'm sure you're going to want to do after this conversation. So welcome, Shaan. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Hey, Will. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, well, you have a really cool story. I mean, you grew up, it sounded like, in sort of an inner city school at your parents' budget motel. And then you turned into this super successful businessman, doctor, and just great all around person from everything I've sort of heard. So I'd be curious, starting from the beginning, growing up in Las Vegas, where you were attending these inner city public schools, like what were some of the challenges you faced, and how do you think they shaped you for where you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, Las Vegas, as everyone knows it, everyone kind of thinks of the strip and, the glamour and the lights and all of that. But I grew up far from that glamour. I grew up kind of in the inner city of Vegas. My parents, they bought a motel when I was like 2 years old. So pretty much my whole life, I grew up there. And so I was zoned for these public schools that were not that great. And in fact, the high school dropout rate when I was in high school was 37%. And so, I know that many people listening probably have, similar school districts, not great school or education systems in their area. But I hope that today's conversation inspires you to take education into your own hands as a father and as a parent and really help your child succeed, because that's what happened for me. My parents took education really seriously. They always encouraged me to succeed. And so I was a really good student. I got straight A's throughout school, both middle school and high school. And I did well in math, I did well in English, but what was really hard for me was standardized testing. So I was not a naturally good standardized test taker. I had a lot of test anxiety. My parents didn't go to college here. I didn't know the first thing about test prep. And on the very first SAT that I ever took, I barely scored above average. And so, I spent hundreds of hours in the library self studying for the SAT. I developed a lot of strategies. I learned a lot of strategies that unlocked the exam for me. And eventually I was able to raise my SAT score 640 points and get a perfect score, which is something that only 0.02% of all students achieve. That completely changed my life. I got into some of the nation's top universities. I got a $500,000 in college scholarship offers. And it really set the path to change kind of all of my opportunities, meet all kinds of great people at these universities, go to college for absolutely free. And that's what I want to help student, or that's what I do help students now do through Prep Expert, is change their own lives through changing their scores.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, can you talk a little bit more about what your parents did in terms of, obviously they were like, make sure you do your homework, but I assume it was beyond that. Were there extra tutoring? Did they make sure that you spent a certain amount of time learning, or what was that like growing up?
Yeah, so it's really important question. I'd say there was a few things. So one thing is my dad really led by example, and I think kids learn a lot from their parents by watching what they do rather than hearing what what they're told to do by their parents. And so for me, I would watch my dad go to the pharmacy that he worked. He'd wake up at 5 a.m., get there by 6 a.m. He'd work until 2 p.m. And then he'd come back to the motel and then help my mom run the motel from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. And so he was working all of the time. And so by watching that example, it really developed in me a sense of hard work and reward and capitalism, really, because my dad was the American dream in a lot of senses. And so I'd say that's one thing that was really important for me to see, and that's why I work so hard even to this day. Secondly, from an education angle, I think my dad did a lot of the education himself. So, what I mean by that is, when I was a child, he would read to me, he would teach me how to do workbooks, etc. I was, like I said, I wasn't in the best education system. So, we took a lot of the education. While I did attend the public schools, it's not like I was homeschooled, but he did do a lot of the helping me with homework and all that. And his goal, he always told me, was to basically get me to a level where I'm self-motivated enough by the time I'm in high school, and so that he really didn't spend much time with me on academics once I got to high school, because I had learned how to study, I had learned how to do homework with his help through elementary and middle school. And so I think that's really important for students, to learn from their parents. Is your parents are basically an external motivator. And I have a strategy in Prep Expert Digital SAT Playbook for students, which is called Harness Self Motivation, which means like internal motivation is so much more powerful when your student is actually inspired to work hard and do well. So then, the next natural question is, how do you inspire your student to do well? Well, the reason I worked so hard when I was in school, and my dad really inspired it. He said, you should look into these medical programs that give you automatic acceptance in medical school since you want to become a doctor. And so I looked into them, and they had very competitive SAT scores. And so that's what really inspired me to study for the exam so much. So, what I always tell students is, find your larger mission, your larger goal. Do you want to go to this particular program, particular university? Do you want to get a scholarship, whatever it may be? But find your own internal motivator, because that's what's going to help you do the hard things. Now, I think for dads listening, my dad helped me find that. He, suggested the medical program. So suggest a path for your child to help them see the larger picture and hopefully inspire it for them.
I like that a lot. That's a great goal. And, one of the most frustrating things of being a parent is your kids don't listen to what you say, but they watch what you do. So it's very easy to say, oh, no, study, or, oh, work hard, or this or that. Or don't yell, or don't, X, Y, or Z, clean up your room. But if you're not actually doing it yourself, the message just gets lost. And that's a pretty challenging aspects. I'm curious, did were there other interests that were cultivated in your home outside, like extracurriculars? Like, did your parents say, "Hey, why don't you try piano? Why don't you try guitar? You want to try soccer, or anything like that?" Or was it just very academic focused? Like, "Hey, here's your number one job. Do it."
Yeah, I mean, I think I was very academic focused because that's just what my parents had known. They grew up in India, but I took on some extracurriculars myself just because I spent a lot of time in school, and so what I would do was I played a lot of basketball. I joined the volleyball team, and then so that was sports, and then for extracurriculars, I had a strong interest in business always. So I think it's no surprise. I'm a business owner and entrepreneur now. So I became the president of an organization called DECA in high school, which was business and marketing kind of focused. I joined National Honor Society. So I joined quite a few clubs, activities, did some community service through volunteering at a hospital that was local. And that's really what inspired me to become a doctor. So a lot of the experiences extracurricularly, both like with the business club as well as with the volunteering at the hospital, did eventually inspire my future careers as an entrepreneur and as a doctor.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. I like that. And then, you mentioned you took your SATs the first time and didn't do nearly as well as, you knew you could do, which you proved later. And you were, I'm sure, frustrated by that. What was the sort of study process? Because a lot of people, I think, who are in that situation or have been in a situation like that, it's like, all right, I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to do more. And, it sounds like you almost, I don't know if hacked is the right word, but you strategized, or can you talk about what your approach was like when you were kind of beating the system or going to a perfect score?
Yeah. So, when I locked myself in the library over the summer between 11th and 12th grade, I probably took around 20 plus official SAT exams. So, those are the exams produced by the College Board, the company that creates the SAT. But I wouldn't just take practice tests because that's not enough. So what I would do was I would read different strategies, try them out, see what worked for me, see what didn't work for me. I would try new things that I just found worked and didn't work. And what I would do is I would keep a notebook. I called it a insight SAT insight notebook of all the strategies in terms of that worked for me, what didn't work for me, why I was getting certain questions right, why I was getting certain questions wrong. And what's funny is that SAT Insight Notebook is what eventually turned into the first SAT prep book. And now, with the new book, it's an iteration of that, obviously updated for the new digital SAT. But that's really how I did it. And that's usually what I recommend for students who are preparing for any standardized test. Use the official test questions by the test creator because those are going to be most similar to what your student sees on test day. But then it's not enough just to practice because you can practice, like you said, you can keep practicing, practicing, practicing. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to figure out how to apply certain techniques and strategies. So then you have to use really good strategies and apply those to those questions. So for me, of course, I'm biased here. I recommend the strategies we teach our prep expert, but there are plenty of great companies out there that offer great strategies that'll help you ace the exam. But it's really, I think a lot of people only do half of it in that they practice but they don't actually learn new strategies, learn new techniques, and then apply them to those practice questions.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, it sounds obvious, but I think you're right. It's something that a lot of people miss. It's just, well, I'm doing the work, and I think there's a quote I like a lot. It's not 10,000 hours; it's 10,000 iterations. Right? It's you have to learn each time. If you're just putting in the reps and not understanding what's going wrong with the reps or right with the reps, then what are you really learning, right? So that's it. That's really interesting. So you talked about hard work, um, learning from your mistakes. Are there other maybe lessons from your upbringing, from growing up, that you learned, or to put the frame it another way? You mentioned you don't have kids yet, but when you do have kids, what strategies are you going to use for them? Not just on the SATs, because I think that's probably in your book, but to raise them to be hard workers. To what other values are important to you there?
Yeah, and this is something that I teach our students at Prep Expert. It's one of our strategies as well, which is called "Use the Secret to Success." So I'm sure many listeners here, as well as you're familiar with, this what's called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment, which is basically where they placed children and they tested their ability to delay gratification. And what they found was the children who had more self control when they're younger ended up becoming more successful by many measures of life, whether it was higher SAT scores, better colleges, careers, salaries, better health. And so, what I learned when I was in my upbringing through that SAT library self studying was I developed a habit of self control and to delay gratification. And that led to my success on the SAT, but it also led to my success in college, medical school, business school, and even as an entrepreneur. So, when I have children, hopefully, that would be the number one thing I would try to help instill in my children is the ability to have self control and delay gratification because I know that it can help them become successful in so many other aspects of their lives. Nowadays with social media and TikTok, everyone wants instant gratification, right? You want to post something, you want to get likes right away, you want to see the next video, etc. So I think it's really more important than ever to develop these traits in our children.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Hard work, delayed gratification. And as an aside, I was just in Disney World with my family, and you see all these long lines, and you kind of wonder, will this next generation be able to sit through these lines? I mean, because we're not used to waiting for anything. We're used to, click a button, listen to the song you want to listen to, change the channel, or change your, YouTube right when you're bored with something. I mean, so that's going to be harder and harder, I think, for us parents and future generations to have to deal with. So yeah, yeah. In terms of, I mean, you're a super hard worker, you're super accomplished. How would you, how do you balance, or how do you recommend balancing kind of your career with your personal life? What's what advice would you give to other parents on achieving that, or to parents on achieving that?
Yeah. I kind of think of hard work and success as coming in seasons. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times when you're working really, really hard, whether it's studying for an exam or it's working on a project or it's launching a business, whatever it may be, you will have to sometimes work 60, 70, 80 hours and sacrifice some of the more fun things or the recreational things, and that's just the reality of it if you want to be successful. However, you don't need to get so down on yourself and think, well, my life is always going to be like this, because it comes in waves. After that exam is done, after you launch your product or your business, you can take your foot off the pedal a little bit and relax and balance things out. And I think that's a healthy balance to have. I don't think, anyone should be working 80, 100-hour weeks for, years and years on end. But if you have to do it for 2, 3 months to study for an exam or to launch a business, I think that's okay, as long as you balance. Maybe you book a vacation, like you said, to Disney World, or something fun after to look forward to. Oftentimes the breaks are a good mental and physical break from all the work that'll help you recharge and get back to a more regular level of work after.
Yeah, no, I love that. The seasons are a really important aspect, I think, I mean, of life, but in parenting, we feel that a lot. Like you become a dad, or a new parent, and you're like, I don't see my friends anymore. I don't go out anymore. Or it's like, yeah, I mean, for this period of time, that's where you're going to be focused on, especially at the very beginning, where you're not sleeping, your kid's not sleeping, you're trying to just keep the little thing alive, right? But as you get older, that changes, and there's different seasons for different activities. Basically, I think that's a great way of putting it, and a great way to think about it for your kids as well. For sure, for sure. Because I mean, to me, it's uh, going to your life and your life story. It's pretty amazing that you did all, got your perfect SAT, went to medical school, had a lot of success there, and then you just said, you know what? I think I'm going to start a company. Like, can you, not a company in the medical space. I know a decent number of doctors have done that, but you went a totally different direction. So I'm curious, what was the thought process behind that? And how did you make that decision?
Yeah, I never wanted to, or I never saw myself as someone who was going to start a test prep company or be this owner of a test prep business. I kind of fell into it. And what I mean by that is, after I got to college and I had these amazing results with my own SAT score, all I wanted to do was write a book. So I wanted to write the first SAT prep book that's written by a perfect score student. And I had some amazing insights and strategies I wanted to share through a book. But this was like 12, 13, 14 years ago, maybe. So it was a while ago. So this was before self publishing was a big thing. So I had to go the traditional publishing route. And so I pitched it out to 100 literary agents and publishers, this book proposal, and, Penguin, Random House, all the big ones, and got 100 rejections. Every single person said, this is never going to work. The SAT prep market is too competitive. You don't have a platform to write such a book. And so I could have just given up, but I said, I've already written all this curriculum, I've written all this content. Why don't I at least take my destiny into my own hands and teach a course. I'll teach one course before I start medical school, and we'll see how, that'll be that. So I taught the course, and I thought that was going to be a one-time course. But what ended up happening was, in the 6 weeks after I taught the SAT course, the 18 students I had in my first course had an average score improvement of 376 points. It was incredible. I mean, students went from the 50th percentile to the 90th percentile. So of course, I had parents and students who wanted more courses, more tutoring, etc. So I began training other instructors to teach my curriculum. I still went off to medical school, and the rest is history. Over the past 12 years, we've helped over 100,000 students now improve their test scores, get into college, and win scholarships. And of course, the highlight of the company was pitching it on Shark Tank to scale it further. But what's funny is, after I started having the results for about a year, and with the courses, McGraw-Hill, the world's largest education publisher, came back and said, now that you have these courses, we'll give you the book deal. We did the book. It went number one on Amazon for SAT prep. It sold over 50,000 copies. And so it kind of goes to show you, like, when life gives you a bunch of rejections, if you just take a slightly different path, sometimes that works out better for you. And I am certainly like a proof of that. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful lesson. It's a lesson that I think we struggle with, adults, us parents, and kind of get worried about our kids and having them deal with adversity and have ups and downs of life, which that's what life is. There's always ups and downs. But it's just, it feels more painful for your kids to deal with those downs, and you want to help them through it. And sometimes it is just, hey, this sucks. It's a rejection. But you can always look back. You can never look forward and say, oh, this happened because of, X, Y, and Z. You can look back and say, oh, I'm here because of this rejection. If you would have gotten that first book deal, you might have said, great, I'm a best-selling author and I'm going to finish up medical school. And that's that. Right.
Yeah. There may not have
But
been a prep expert course or anything. Yeah. It would have been sad for me, but also all the students I could have never helped. Yeah.
yeah, no, so you just never know. And that, I think, is a really important lesson, in general in life, that I try and remember.
Yeah,
And
no, I think it's, especially for parents listening, I think it's important that um, you see the silver lining when your kid fails or has a rejection, because a lot of the most important traits you develop are that resilience over time. Not to say you want to have any child go through any, like, really traumatic failure, but I think some failure, some rejection is important for everyone to go through, and it makes the wins feel so much better too. It makes the highs higher. Yeah.
that's right. No, it really does. It really does. And you mentioned Shark Tank, and I know a lot of my listeners watch Shark Tank, so I just need to ask a question or two here. Can you talk about what that experience was like being on the show?
Yeah, it was incredible. I went on the show back in 2016. I pitched my company, and I ended up closing an investment deal with Mark Cuban. Got $250,000 for 20% equity in the business. The deal went through. Mark's been an amazing investor, advocate, and partner for the company ever since. He's helped us negotiate licensing deals, do business partnership, access to the whole Mark Cuban company's team. We've co-invested in other education companies. We've co-authored books on entrepreneurship. We've even co-hosted entrepreneurship panels. We just did one a couple of weeks ago with the Obama Foundation. So it's been a really a dream come true.
Yeah, no, that's it seems like it. It seems like it. I'm curious, when you're up there and you're negotiating with, Mark Cuban or with the Sharks, it's life changing, I think, in a lot of ways, if to get the deal. Uh, and so you're probably biased to try and get the deal. But did you have in your head, hey, I'm going to do it up to this point and then I'll walk away if the numbers don't work? Or what were your thoughts, kind of through the negotiation, through what the deal you'd accept?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So I went in there knowing that I was going to get negotiated. So I went in there asking for $250,000 for 10% equity. knowing that someone would probably negotiate me to 250,000 to 20% equity, and that would be the maximum equity I would give up, which is exactly what happened, which is Mark went for the 20% equity for the 250,000. It was my limit. Mark was also the one shark that I really wanted. And so it all worked out almost perfectly as I had planned.
I like that. No, that's well done, well done. And then, there's some strategy there. Obviously, you just articulated. Where did you learn to negotiate? Where did you learn that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that for entrepreneurs, I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart and a negotiator at heart. So, I used to I don't know where I get it. Maybe it's genetic. But, my dad owned a motel, so he was a business owner in a gas station. But even when I was a child, I remember when I was fifth grade, I used to trade trading cards and then Pokemon cards, and then eventually I started selling the Pokemon cards like fifth, sixth grade. Then I sold like CDs and things on eBay, and all kinds of stuff. So I think that entrepreneurial like negotiating thing is just like an inborn trait. I don't know if I've met other entrepreneurs and they just say, yeah, I used to do these things in school too. And I think that's usually when you know that you might want to own your own business one day.
Yeah, no, well, that is a good tell for sure. But even if you're not going to be an entrepreneur, it's really valuable to have those skills in terms of negotiation, in terms of understanding numbers and quantifying things. You know, I guess when you have kids, if you have kids, what are you is that something you would encourage, starting their own business or kind of going after their interests in a financial way? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's super interesting. When and if I have kids, I think that it's going to be one of the most important life skills that I'm going to want to teach them, because what's super interesting is most schools don't teach personal finance, and they don't teach it, or at least they don't teach it enough. I know I never learned it in school myself. And so, saving, investing, negotiating, these are all super important for whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're just have a W-2 job. Is super important to know for life. And so that's certainly something I'm going to instill. What is very interesting about all the sharks, since we were on the topic of Shark Tank, I know that most of the sharks have basically vowed not to give their children a huge inheritance. And I think that's important too, because you want to inspire your kids to work hard and not just have everything be a handout. And that I think that's what I would do with my own kids.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's a Warren Buffett quote. He wants to give his kids enough so that they can do anything, but not so much that they won't do anything, or something something along
Yeah,
those lines, right?
a really good one.
Um, yeah, because you're right about what they teach you in school, which goes back to kind of the parenting. It's like you don't a great example, like you don't learn about student loans or what a loan is really. I mean, on the level that you need to for something that's going to affect you, potentially 20 years, 30 years, maybe longer in your life, right? You're a 17-year-old or 18-year-old making these decisions, these huge loans that you can't discharge if you go into bankruptcy, right? I mean, they're always after you, which I'm not commenting on that as much, but more just commenting on a lot of people don't have that knowledge. They say, oh, I don't have the money for college, I can just get this loan. So I do want to hear about your $1 billion goal, though, of scholarships. I think that's really um, admirable. Like, can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, it's been almost over 10 years now since I launched my first SAT, or over 10 years since I launched my first SAT prep book. And since then, we've helped students at Prep Expert through our books and courses win over $100 million in college scholarships. It's really a passion of mine. To your point, student debt is hitting almost $2 trillion in the United States. Average cost of college is close to $200,000. So my goal really with test prep is to do exactly what it did for me, which is it eliminated my college costs. So for our students, I try to either eliminate or at least reduce their college costs significantly through merit-based scholarships and financial aid. And so my favorite part of running Prep Expert is getting those emails from parents and students saying, we just got a full tuition scholarship for $200,000, or we just got a half tuition scholarship for $100,000, because that's life changing. And so, with the release of my newest book, Prep Expert Digital SAT Playbook, I wanted to go bigger than $100 million. So I think that this book can really reach hundreds of thousands of students, which will result in over $1 billion in scholarships earned. And the math gets there pretty quickly, because if you think about it, if the average full tuition scholarship is $200,000, you get to hundreds of millions or even $1 billion, even if you only help a few thousand students achieve those scholarships. We've had students individually win $1 million plus, $500,000 plus from various scholarship offers. So I know it sounds like a big number, but I think we'll blow past it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big number, and but I agree. I think with your strategies and with kind of who you are with your drive, you have a really good shot at doing that. And as you think about again your kids, your future kids, or what you would advise parents, what how would you advise them to teach about personal finance, to teach finances to their kids, things like allowance, things like budgeting potentially? I mean, do you think about that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's important to start building a habit. So there's multiple parts to personal finance. The buckets that I kind of put it in is there's spending, there's saving, there's investing. Those are probably the big three, I would say. So one of the key things that I think you can teach kids is spending pretty quickly, right? Through allowances and allowing them to decide what they spend on, or not decide what they spend on and save and let it grow. So I think that's a super important skill, because a lot of people just they end up in personal finance traps because they spend too much. So you've got to figure out the spending part first. Then there's obviously the earning. I think that's another great thing you can do. I know one of the things that my mom and dad did when I was a kid was they would give me these little jobs at the motel or gas station, and they paid me like 10, 25, 5, 10, $20, whatever it was. And I would love it as a kid, because I'd be like, oh, I can earn this money. So you got to learn how to earn as well. Then invest, then you got to save it. And so you're figuring out what to save for, and then investing. So I think these are all skills. Investing is a little bit more difficult, but I know that as your kid gets older, you can open up bank accounts and savings accounts and show them how interest works. I think that's a really I what's super interesting, at least in my own life, is once I started seeing how money can make more money through interest. um you become very less interested in spending money. Like, you're like, I'd rather just have it sit here and grow. And I think if you can teach that to your kids early on, you're going to set them up for financial success.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean it's a balance, of course, but you always hear like, hey, if I instead of buying every new iPhone, I invested the money in Apple, 10 years later I'd have whatever the number is, but a huge amount saved. And again, it's a balance because you want to make sure that you're enjoying life and you buy things that you like, but the power of investing, the power of compounding are incredible. And then just the basics like you're saying of like what are you making, what are you spending, if that those two don't match up right, well there's going to be kind of an issue. um so no, I like that. And so that, and the SAT I guess has gone more digital now, right? Can you talk about how that's evolved, like where we are today with a lot of us haven't taken the SAT for a number of years now, like
Yeah.
what's it like?
There's some big changes happening to the SAT that I think parents and dads in particular should be aware of, which is in 2024, the SAT is going digital for the very first time. So, what does that mean? Well, the SAT, as we all know it, for almost the last 100 years, it's been around. It's been a paper and pencil test, and that's what we've taken. So now we're going digital. So it's on you're going to take it, you're still going to take it at a testing center. It's not like you take it at home where You can just have ChatGPT open in the background answering all your questions. It's not like that. You still got to go to a testing center. You have a proctor, but you're going to be taking on a laptop or a tablet. But it's not just that it's a digital exam. There's a lot of changes to this new digital SAT, including the entire format has changed, meaning it's no longer a 4 hour exam like you and I took. It's a 2 hour and 14-minute exam. So it's a lot shorter. It's no longer 250 questions. It's only 98 questions. So it's the first version of the SAT that's under 100 questions. There's no more obscure vocabulary. The passages are a lot shorter. They're not 750 words, they're just 100 words. The math, you can use a digital calculator on every question. There's no calculator section. So, all of these changes that I'm talking about hopefully are, sound like positive changes. And I think they are, because it's the most student friendly version of the SAT I think that's ever been created. I know that the SAT and the ACT have gotten a lot of flack over the years for, not being super fair and biased, et cetera. And I think they've solved a lot of those problems. They're giving students more time per question than ever. So I think it's going to be a welcome change from parents and students.
That's that's very interesting. It makes sense on a bunch of levels. I mean, it's a little funny, but maybe not that it's shortened just because like we don't have the attention spans anymore or whatever it is. It's a fewer
That's
number of
probably a
questions.
big reason. Yeah.
um, but so it's really important that you're familiar, you're comfortable with technology, and that's something that I struggle with sometimes with my kids, saying like, all right, screen time isn't good, but there's different types of screen time. And I also, in the future, my kids are going to be on their screens, not on, just computer screens, but we need them to be familiar with how to use questions. Even now in elementary school, they have these standardized tests that are a lot of times digital.
Yeah.
So how do you view screen time and really in the guise of helping your kids?
Yeah, I have a strategy in Prep Expert Digital SAT Playbook that says turn off the tech. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when you're trying to study or you're trying to focus, or even for the parents and the dads listening, you're trying to do some serious work, you want to turn off the technological distractions, right? So I actually put my phone in a different room when I'm trying to get some serious work done or studying done, so that I'm not distracted by all the notifications. I don't get the urge to go on Instagram or TikTok or any social media or check my text messages and all that stuff. Now, you make a great point, which is many students have to learn on their computer or on their tablet. They got to take tests. Even the SAT is digital now. So, what I usually encourage in those cases is, one, if you can, download the materials that you need and then disconnect from the internet if possible. If you have to be connected to the internet because maybe you're watching an online class or something like that, then what you want to do is make sure that you, one, don't have your phone around, and two, don't have other applications up like Facebook or distracting websites like Reddit and all that stuff. And that's just, it's no good for anyone in terms of your focus, your attention, etc. But super powerful there. One of the studies I talk about in the strategy in the book is, there was a study that showed that students who took a test with their phone on the desk versus students who had this phone in a different room, they ended up scoring 20% higher. And the phone was turned off and not even like it wasn't even on. But just by having the sight of your phone, it gets your mind kind of off track because you're thinking, well, did I get a notification? I want to check, blah, blah. So it's like these micro distractions that happen to us. And so super, super important from a studying, a work, thing to limit screen time or limit distractions if possible.
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard that study. That's really interesting. Um, and I wonder if the same thing holds true, uh, in the bedroom, right? People say don't bring your phone in the bedroom, and even if you're not looking at it, maybe it's there. Do you have your phone in your bedroom? What do you do, Sean?
Yeah, so I actually put my phone in, I have it in the bedroom, but I put it on the other end of the room. So like I have to physically get up out of bed to go check my phone because if I know that if I put it next to my bed, like where I sleep, I will just check it. And, I know a lot of people kind of scroll until they fall asleep and that kind of thing. So I try to at least even because I use it as an alarm. I have it in the same room, but I have it at the end of the room so that I have to physically make effort to go check it, and that helps me limit the amount that I'm checking it.
That's smart. I like that. I like that. Uh, Offhanded question here. If I gave you or you took the SAT right now, do you think you'd get a perfect score?
Uh, I don't think so. No, I think that you gotta be a little bit lucky to get a perfect score. I'll be the first one to tell you I got a little bit lucky in that, there could have been like there's always 2 or 3 questions you're not 100% sure about, even if you're like an amazing test taker, and they either go your way or they don't. Luckily, when I was in high school, they went my way. But I'm certain if you gave me a few attempts, I'd get a perfect score on at least one of them. But if you only gave me one shot, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so interesting though how, I love what you're doing both when, we were talking about scholarships, that's a great mission. But also it's, somewhat frustrating that it's not just studying and working hard for the test. It's thinking in the right way. It's learning these strategies, and I appreciate that you did the work and you've found the strategies and you've given those tools. But it's almost like people who find your book, who find your website, hopefully have a leg up to those that don't. It's kind of crazy that that's how life works. I guess that's life, but that makes a huge difference, right? Two kids with similar grades, but one who does 300 points better on the SAT. I mean, they're the one who's getting into the college, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, which is, I know people say that, well, standardized tests are not fair because certain students can prepare for them or not prepare for them. It doesn't take a whole lot of money, I would say. Like I said, I studied in the library with free books and free tests. Anyone can do that. Of course, having a tutor like me or courses that I offer does give you a little bit of an advantage. But at the end of the day, any student can put in the work. And that's really important to realize. Um, you know, I think that when you look at everything else with respect to college admissions, like grades have been so inflated over the past 20 years that 47% of all high school seniors graduate with an A average now. So it's like, how do you really tell the difference between one 4.0 GPA and another 4.0 GPA. Then you look at extracurricular activities. Well, I think those actually bias wealthy families even more because, I mean, who can afford the most expensive summer programs or starting nonprofits or sports like water polo and fencing? It's that's even way more costly than test prep. And then you look at college essays, and now you got ChatGPT writing essays for everyone and AI. And so I don't think there's a perfect way to do it, but I think standardized tests have worked for 100 years. And, if students work hard, they can really get rewarded for it the way that I did when I was in high school.
No, that's a great message. That's a great message. I appreciate all you're doing, Sean. And my last question is: any final words of wisdom for our listeners, particularly those with younger kids, younger students at home, or entrepreneurs maybe who are dreaming of their own success stories? What would you tell us?
Yeah, I think that my final word would just be try to develop these traits as early on as you can. That I talked. The number one is self control, like having the ability to really just focus and be, hyper controlled in terms of there's so many distractions. Like there's TikTok distractions and friends and so other social media platforms and all this other stuff to be able to zone all that out and like really focus on your work or your studying or project or etc. Such a key skill. So you can learn that through test prep. You can learn it through high school, or you can learn it through any school. You can learn it through entrepreneurship. You can learn it through your parents. But learn self control. Learn to delay gratification. Work hard because these are skills that lead you to success in all aspects of your life, not just education, but hopefully in business and fitness and social situations and so much more.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, and that's another great point. Is your book, teaches the SAT in particular, but you can easily see how that will help in other areas of life. Saying, okay, this is really, really, really hard. I could, keep throwing as much work as I can at it, which I should do, but I can also do it in an intelligent way and find, hacks, or I hate that word hacks, but find ways to achieve what I'm trying to achieve, in sort of smarter ways and a more intelligent approach. So, um, sell us, Sean. Where can we find your book? Where should we go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so for parents and students who have a high school student, dads who have high schoolers, definitely check out prepexpert.com. We have online SAT and ACT courses with the best score improvement guarantees in the industry, with the best instructors in the industry. You can check out my book, Prep Expert Digital SAT Playbook, as well as my Prep Expert ACT books. You can find those all on prepexpert.com as well. And I'm looking forward to working with a lot of your families and listeners.
Yeah, no, this has been fantastic, Sean. I'm really excited. Yeah, not excited for the SAT, but when we get there, I'm excited to have you as a resource and your site as a resource to help us. So thanks for
Yeah,
joining us. Yeah,
no,
thank
it's
you.
a great conversation. Appreciate the time, and hopefully we do it again soon.
That sounds good. Thanks, Sean.